So I wanted to start with a little bit of metagame discussion here, looking at the Milwaukee numbers. I'll zoom in just a little bit here. These are the day one Milwaukee numbers for Masters Division provided by Arcanine Labs. So I've organized this data a little bit more in a way that I like to view it. This is the raw data. This is the way that Arcanine gave out the information. But here on the next sheet, I've just consolidated the Arceus variants a little bit more. So we have like Arceus VSTAR Other, and then we have Arceus VSTAR Inteleon B and non-B together. For the Milwaukee numbers for Masters, and then I also will have my projected numbers for NAIC. So why don't we start with that? And if anybody watching live has questions in the chat, you can go ahead and leave those questions, and I will get to them after we look at the metagame numbers. So, for the most part, Palkia and Mew, I don't think they can really go much higher or much lower. These numbers are, of course, approximated just to get to a nice even 100%. So some of them might look a little weird. So, Palkia and Mew, I don't think there will be a statistically significant difference in the Palkia and the Mew. We have no idea what the split between Turbo and Inteleon was, because when they analyzed the meta for Arcanine, they just put all the Palkia into the same thing. So that's what we've got to work with. And the only reason I have these slightly lower is because I think the other decks will be getting some of those little bits of percentages, because now we have a more defined metagame. So, Palkia and Mew, I don't think will be much different. Regigigas, I don't think will be much different. If anything, I think Regigigas will be almost exactly the same, because the people who didn't play in Milwaukee that built Regigigas are going to play Regigigas regardless of what did well in Milwaukee. I think, and I think that's true for a lot of decks, that like people who weren't going to Wisconsin and are just going to NAIC built their deck weeks ahead of time, and they don't care what happened at Milwaukee. They don't care what anybody says on the internet. They built their deck weeks ago and they're sticking to that deck. So I think Regigigas is one of those decks that will just be played by default. So I'd expect to maybe hit one in day one. I actually hit 0 in day one in Milwaukee, but I hit 2 in day 2. Other should be about the same, maybe even a little bit more of rogue shenanigans. Maybe this could go up a few percentages. Arc-Int, I think Arc-Int will go up, almost 100%. Because people, there was anti-Arc Inteleon propaganda leading into Milwaukee. People said it's a dead deck, it loses to Palkia. None of these things are true. So I think AI should go up a bit. Blissey Milk should go up a bit. It got second place, so people will take that as a reason to play Blissey Milk if they already liked the deck, or they can just net deck Connor's list. AI Palkia, or I'm sorry, not AI, Arceus Palkia, no Inteleon in here. Not Palkia either, Pikachu. Let's restart that one. Arceus V-Star Flying Pikachu VMAX. Some good players played it, and I don't know why. Like Azul played it, Jose Marrero, Danny Altavilla, Caleb Gedimer. I don't think this deck is good, but good players played it, and Azul got top 16 with it. So people are going to see that, and it's going to at least keep the numbers the same, maybe a little bit higher for this deck. And they'll also see, Blissey and Regigigas being played and want to play this because Flying Pikachu's attack walls out basic Pokemon. Origin Form, Dialga V-Star saw no success. I think it had like one day 2, but I think this deck is on the decline. Arceus Duraludon will, Arceus Duraludon got some confirmation this week with winning, even though the list wasn't good that won. I think people will play Arcdora, maybe even that deck the winning Arcdora list, so I think that'll tick up a little bit. Arceus VSTAR other non-Intel decks, I think this is going down. Now people know what to play. They're going to play Arc Int, they're going to play Flying Pika, they're going to play Dora, or maybe they'll even play some Charizard. But I think the other Arceus variants not listed will be on a decline. Darkrai V-Star also on a decline, but this is another one of those decks that people have like Regigigas, like they just want to play Darkrai and they don't care. They can go 0-5 drop or whatever, and you can tell them that that's going to happen. You know, I do think a Turbo Dark made day 2, or maybe even 2 of them did, but obviously it's not a high tier deck. But I think this will get some play just by the default people that want to play Darkrai and really won't get any other play for any other reason. Inteleon Toolbox is still a fine deck, but it saw little to no success in Milwaukee, so I think the numbers will drop a little if anything, and anybody that was just planning on bringing it already will still bring it. Ice Rider Calyrex, about the same. Frank Persick put out his list, which is probably the only way to play Ice Rider because every other list sucks, but I still don't think the deck is worth playing, at least for me. Gengar VMAX, I don't think it should be being played. I mean, we have Regigigas happening. We have Miltank happening. You know, I don't think Gengar VMAX should get much play. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX did not see play. Even Tord didn't play it. I don't think it's going to get much play. It'll drop a little bit. Hisuian Samurott V-Star, drop a little bit. You know, it saw little to no success. Arceus V-Star, Malamar VMAX might go up a little bit because it did get a top 16. There are people that specifically like this deck, and AI did well, and Palkia did well. So those are reasons to play Malamar VMAX. Even though it doesn't have perfect matchups against those decks, I played against 2 Mally Cap decks while piloting Arceus and Teleon, and I lost to one and I beat one, because in one of the rounds I went first and I didn't brick, so I beat it. Because AI is just inherently a better deck than Malamar VMAX, but sometimes they'll get you with the Jolteon. Jolteon VMAX should see 0% play, but it was a deck on the Arcanine data report, so I just gave it a 0.5. That's the same with Leafeon and Flaffy. I gave them 0.5s. I don't expect them to do well. Arceus, Galarian, Moltres, and Teleon like the Toolbox Arceus. I actually think some more people will try this now, since we have a little bit of a meta formed. Arceus Charizard, people might play this if Alex Szymanski and Alex Kreckler and that crew shared their deck. I forget if their list was shared. If it was, I think people could net deck that and play it because their list was actually very good. Zoroark Toolbox, I don't think should see play. Stone Journer, I don't think should see play. Rapid Strike Malamar, I actually put it up to 1% because I think people will play this even though they shouldn't. Durant, no, and Inteleon VMAX, no. And that's kind of what I project for NAIC. I don't have any groundbreaking thoughts here, really. Just what decks will go up and which decks will go down between now and this weekend from Milwaukee to NAIC. But if anybody in chat has differing thoughts on any of this or questions about any of my thoughts that I just conveyed, feel free to let me know. But we can start taking some questions from the chat now. Let's see if I can do this right. Chat. There we go. And then let's also try this. And do this. There we go. We've got a featured chat thing now. So, I'm Fernin for you asks, or says, in my testing, Palkia beats Arceus Pika because it bricks 2 out of 3 games, lol. Yeah, that's why I'm not playing Arceus Pika. It doesn't feel like, it's not a good deck on its own. That's the thing, it's not a good deck on its own. It's just good into the things that it's specifically trying to play against. That's why I wouldn't play it. Thought on Blissey. I think the Blissey deck that plays more up into Blissey than Miltank is good, which I've been saying for weeks now. The Shintaro Ito kind of build, or at least Shintaro was the first person I saw play it, where they only played one Miltank and they played more healing for Blissey. I think that deck's fine. I don't think it's any higher than tier 2. I think it took some luck to get that high, but every tournament run takes some luck. I wouldn't play Blissey. I think there will be some counters, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see Blissey in top 8 again. It's just not the deck I'm playing because I'm more comfortable with other decks. There are like, there's a few decks in the format that I would play because I'm comfortable with them and I feel that I can express my skill the most with them. But if Blissey's testing well for you and you like the deck, or maybe even you've built it a little differently and you think the meta's not ready for it, then I would say go for it. I think Blissey's a fine deck. I don't think it's second place worthy. I think it overperformed, but I think it's a fine deck. How do I feel about Rapid Strike Urshifu in this format? I've tested Rapid Strike Urshifu a good bit, and I think it needs to tech for too many things. I think there's too many factors going on, and even when you tech for it, it can lose to a Marnie, or it can lose, more importantly now, to a Roxanne. So I don't think Urshi will see much play, and I don't expect to see any Urshis higher than, like, top 64. And I'm aiming for top 32. So if it's not a deck that I can imagine having multiple of in top 32 and getting there without crazy variants, I'm not playing it because I need a top 32 at this event. Do you recommend using brand new sleeves for a tournament or break them in some before? I put on new sleeves the night before the event, and then I shuffle them for a few minutes, and then I go to sleep once I've picked my deck. You should always use brand new sleeves, but make sure there's no factory errors in the sleeves, like bubbles or any markings, and also break them in a little bit so they're not slipping out of your hands. You don't want to break them in enough that they're already dog-earing before round 1, but you want to break them in enough that they're not slipping. Okay, Marky Loves Cats asked what's Doc twice, and I don't know what that means, so if you could elaborate, maybe I could help you out there. Stephen Roche, how do you feel about AI going into NAIC? I'm probably playing AI, and there's really no reason for me to hide that, because what are you going to do? Play Malamar capsules, and then I still win 50% of the time? Like, AI can just beat most of the known metagames, so it can beat most of the known metagame. That's the operative term there, because I'm not saying everybody should play AI because it beats everything. It doesn't. It doesn't beat everything. It just is, it's capable of beating just about everything. What is the number 1 deck? The number 1 deck is probably Palkia and Teleon, I'd say. Would I make any changes to the AI list that made top 8? If I can get my chat to work again. My feature chat thing already stopped working. Here we go. Yeah, Andre asks, would you make any changes to the AI list that made top 8? So Justin and I and a whole bunch of other people all played it basically the same list. We all, like, talked about AI the day before and, like, pretty much came to a list. Just about everyone in that group, about a dozen to 20 people, everyone but me changed to fourth drizzle fourth drizzle instead of second boss, and I kept 2 bosses and 3 drizzle. That's the first change to make to Justin's list. Just cut the fourth drizzle for the second boss. It should play 2 bosses. That's the most important change. Other than that, if you can make any changes that make your turn 1s better or more consistently better, then do that, because if AI gets past turn 1, it's unstoppable. Like Arceus energy, boom, you're off to the races. That's all you need. Package asks, knowing that you need to place within the top 32, does it change the way that you prepare for the tournament? Basically, if it's a deck that I don't think is reasonably showing up in top 32, I'm not playing it. But like, here's the thing. Last week I was also shooting for a top 32, but I feel like shooting for a top 32 at NAIC is almost like shooting for winning. And I think AI can feasibly win the event. So I don't know. I mean, going into a tournament like NAIC, if I only needed like top 256, maybe my prep would be different. My prep would be different. But I don't know. I mean, I like Arceus and Teleon so much, and like I've been playing it since Brilliant Stars came out. So I personally, my individual prep doesn't change, but some people's prep will change based on what they need to, what kind of placement they want. Let's see. I missed one about a Palkia deck, I think. Oh, here we go, from Whitler. We've seen the Palkia VSTAR list with Suicune, Starmie, and Teleon, but there's also the popular Turbo Palkia. Turbo Palkia is fine. It gets... I think Turbo Palkia, I think, is a more... I want to say it's a more consistently popping off kind of deck. Like, you'll probably be getting an attack every turn 2 with Palkia, and then you can also be aggressive. So, like, you can end games pretty quickly. It's I think the best way to put it is it's kind of like the Corviknight VMAX version of Arceus that Kevin Kruger was championing last format, and Kevin said a lot that the good thing about the deck was you either take the lead and you keep the lead, or you never get the lead and so you scoop early. I feel that with Turbo Palkia. I think the best Turbo Palkia variant, though, is the one with the Lightning Energy, Vikavolt, and Raikou. That was my first loss in day 1, round 5. In game 3, I lost to the Vikavolt V hard because they just item locked me after a suboptimal start and I couldn't recover. So I do like that variant. That one actually has a lot of skill. Like, Jose, who was playing the Turbo Palkia with Lightning package, actually played the crap out of me. And I think with regular Turbo Palkia, you just kind of throw up cards on the board and see what happens. So I don't feel like there's a lot of playability and depth to Turbo Palkia. If I wasn't already married to Arceus and Teleon, I would probably be playing Towards list with a couple of changes. Let's see. Any techs you would consider for AI? Examples would be Starmie for Blissey. I think Starmie's good for Blissey. It could be good for Duraludon as well. If you're not already comfortable against Blissey with like Double Shady Dealings Tool Jammer, or Double Shady Dealings Quick Shooting, then maybe if just popping a Blissey is more of your comfort zone, then Starmie could be fine. It is a starter that you don't want down on the board against a lot of matchups, I think. So that would kind of be the con to playing that. Thank you, McCarthy, for rooting for me. Thank you, thank you. What turbo variants do you expect to see? Um, I mean, I pretty much just turbo Palkia. I hit two turbo Palkia on day one in Milwaukee. I mean, there will be people playing turbo Dialga. There will be people playing turbo Gengar. I don't expect the average player to actually run into them though, and I don't expect those decks to make day two in large quantities. Um, what AI list do you think is best? Because there's so many ways to play it when it comes to the count of different supporters. My list is the best. It's on PokeStats, ptcgstats.com. I got 33rd. That's just base your list off of mine. Justin Kulas's list is one card different, and that's on Limitless. Base your list off of that. The lists that were played and placed well. I think every list that placed well was the good list for AI. So yeah, just take Justin's or mine. If you take Justin's, add the second boss back in. Okay, let's see. PokeStreamer says been testing out UV Max towards Palkia and Samurott VSTAR. Dialga VSTAR, Darkrai VSTAR, Hisuian Lilligant VSTAR just too slow. Wanted to ask your thoughts. So I think Dialga VSTAR is like, if it works well, if it's firing on all cylinders, Dialga VSTAR is actually scary for a lot of decks, and it can be quite fast. I did play against a Darkrai VSTAR deck that was leaning heavily into Galarian Moltres V, and that can also be scary if it's built without techs and it just cuts all the fluff and it's just straight turbo. So I think Darkrai and Dialga are fine decks. They're in like, I'd say Darkrai is probably like tier 3 and Dialga's like tier 2, and like they're fine. Hisuian Lilligant V-Star, I haven't seen anything to impress me from it. But I mean, if you're testing Mew VMAX and Palkia V-Star and Teleon towards list, those are two of the best decks in the format. So you're in, you got good decks in your hands there. And I think Dialga and Darkrai are fine, and they can be quite fast. Hisuian Lilligant, I do think, is too slow, though. Let's see. Okay, we got two different questions on Duraludon. One is thoughts on how bad Duraludon is, and the next one was just a statement that says Duraludon feels very linear. Duraludon is very linear, but I did mention it last week that I thought Duraludon was a top 10 deck. I did say that in my top 10 decks video last week. And I definitely still think it is. It has a great matchup to Reggie. It has a great matchup to Blissey. It has good matchups to non-Inteleon Arceus decks. It has good matchups to some random stuff that are just trying to beat Palkia. Like Rapid Strike Urshifus that could pop up. Lightning decks that aren't prepared to deal with a 360 HP Pokemon that has some healing in it. So I think Duraludon is a top 10 deck. It's like a tier 2-ish deck. It's quite good. It's a deck I would expect to play against maybe once. I don't like the first place list, though. I think Eldegoss V is a throw. I don't think it should be in the deck. It is linear, though. It doesn't give you much room to actually play the game. You just do what your deck lets you do, and that's pretty much it. I thought Dialga V-Star would be too slow if you played Magnezone with it. Yeah, you can't play Magnezone. It has to be exactly Turbo Dialga. Like the ones that have been being played on Play Limitless with Mew and stuff like that. Has to be exactly that. Durant Mill, I don't really respect Durant Mill because I feel like anybody can like just, once they realize what they're playing against, I feel like anybody can, most players can adapt to it and make a game plan with most decks. I think Durant Mill could take advantage of very linear decks, like maybe the Turbo decks, maybe things like Arceus Duraludon, maybe Blissey Milk, if you can just stall something up, Boss, Galar, Mine, and then mill. But I don't think Durant can actually go very far. The winner posted the list and said 59 cards plus Eldegoss. Yeah, I'm not really sure if they were saying like Eldegoss was better than the rest of the deck or if Eldegoss was worse than the rest of the deck. I didn't really understand what that meant. But yeah. I don't understand playing a 7th basic Pokemon that like loses you the game if you start it or makes you play from a turn behind. Okay, I had some questions for the for this. We can go back into here. So here is this is the Milwaukee Arcanine Labs data report. This is what was actually played in Milwaukee, and I just broke it down into percentages. And then this, I just reorganized some of the decks. I reorganized Arceus Int with B and Arceus Int straight into one deck. Because they both play Charons. They both, you know, they have similar game plans, except they use B in some matchups. And then I also put Arceus non-Inteleon other decks into one thing. So this is my projected meta share for NAIC. Not a lot of hot takes, not a lot of things that you haven't already heard or probably already know. But if you have any questions on this and you're just coming into the chat, feel free to ask. Baron asked, what do you think of Samurott? So basically, if you are looking to not invest into a deck that might not have longevity, I wouldn't invest into it until you see it already get performances. I think Hisuian Samurott VSTAR is a very good card. We might just have to wait to see it actually perform. Or it might not. Some cards never get their chance, you know. But I do think that Hisuian Samurott V-Star is a good card. We just don't have a deck for it that's consistently performing well. So I might wait. I might invest, if you want to just invest into one kind of archetype or one core for a deck, I'd probably invest into first an Inteleon engine, and maybe like Arceus or Palkia, and then maybe like a side deck that's much cheaper like Reggie or Blissey. I think that's probably best if you're looking to get the most like longevity out of the deck that you invest in. Like, because Palkia and Teleon isn't going anywhere. It can get countered and it's still a good deck. Hey, Water. Yeah, I'm excited to meet people at NAIC this weekend as well. Out of the top 3 decks, I'd say the Palkia and Teleon mirror match is, I definitely think the person who has practiced and teched for the mirror match is going to win more often than not for the Palkia and Teleon. For Arceus and Teleon, I think it's heavily decided who goes first. And then if the person going first whiffs an energy or whiffs an Arceus, then it goes to the person going second is almost like the person going first. So Arceus and Teleon mirrors are very decided by your start and the coin flip. UV max is whoever gets luckier, and then I think Palkia and Teleon is actually pretty skill based. Um, but I think Arceus and Teleon is just well prepared into everything, which is why that's my top pick. Like I said, if I wasn't already such an Arceus and Teleon fanboy, I'd probably be on Palkia and Teleon this weekend, but I really am comfortable with Arceus and Teleon, so that's where I'm at right now. We have Josh Chili. What's up, Josh Chili? Saying NAIC is a good tournament to play Dora into. Yeah, I think if I needed a top 256, I would probably like Dora would be on my list of decks to just send and not have to think much on the day. Yeah, Almighty, great to meet you too as well. Too. Yeah, also. Yeah, some decks can tech Echoing Horn for Duraludon, but you can't just tech Echoing Horn into every deck, and that answers Duraludon. But yeah, if Mew's, I mean, I've never taken Echoing Horn out of my Mew, and if Mew's just put their Echoing Horn back in, it's not a good time for Duraludon. Hey, T Lackey, will we see you lacking at NAIC? I still have to pack for my flight tomorrow, so I will be cutting stream short soon, like I said. So any questions, fire them off, and I'll try to get to all of them. Let's see. We got one from Whitler that I missed. All right, guys. Thank you for the follows and the subs, by the way. Whitler said last weekend at Milwaukee, I would have either played Mew Genesect or Arc B. This weekend, I would for sure try Arc Int. It's so well rounded and consistent. Jeez, Lackey. Yeah, that's rough, man. I'm sorry. Jeez. Where are you flying out of? Well, I live in New Jersey. So there's a few choices that you can guess at, I guess. My flight hasn't been canceled, if that's what you're wondering. Little bit of a maybe a little bit of a parasocial question though that I'm not going to answer. Will Mew scare off Duraludon? Let's see. No, Mew will not scare off Duraludon. I think Duraludon will be played more this week because they weren't scared of Mew last week. But Mews can just, tech to beat Duraludon more handedly with the Echoing Horn. I think if you're playing Mew, just play the Echoing Horn. Yeah, just it's so good against a lot of decks. Oh, okay, yo, what's up, Angel? Thoughts on Cologne and Mew? Let me get to that in a second. I have to think about my thoughts in that because I didn't even know that was something to think about. I wanted to bring up. Oh, is is meta manipulation real? There's accidental meta manipulation and there's purposeful meta manipulation. The purposeful meta manipulation hardly ever happens, but it does happen. The accidental meta manipulation or the natural meta manipulation is like, when YouTubers post a deck profile and stuff, those decks get played. Or if somebody, like, basically it's just all about social media, right? Like, which list actually gets shared in time for people to practice it. Or which YouTubers hype up which deck, things like that. But there's also, and then there's also natural meta manipulation of, like, a deck does well, and it was, like, not a deck that, let's say, the day 2 was played over and over and over, I don't think we'd get the same result that we got in Milwaukee every time, as compared to something like Indianapolis regionals. I think we would have gotten Ian and Isaiah up at the top 2 a good amount of the time. I don't think we would have gotten Duraludon and Blissey as the top 2 decks even a majority of the time in Milwaukee. So there's also that kind of natural meta influence that happens when a deck does well that probably statistically shouldn't have done as well as it did, which is how I feel about Duraludon and Blissey. But so like Duraludon winning could scare people off of Reggie. So is that meta manipulation? Is that just a natural development? That's kind of up to you to think. But there's also purposeful meta manipulation, but it rarely happens, and it's even more rare when it works. Okay, Cologne and Mew, that's a meme. I'm not even gonna open up a discussion on that. Ambition asked about buying codes and packs. Well, PPCI announced that rotation isn't happening until after the new year, so I think it's pretty safe to start building decks and buying packs and stuff like that now. Mighty, I am potentially playing a very similar list from Milwaukee to NAIC. I think I will at least change a couple of cards, but as of now, I'm playing Arceus and Teleon again. Do you think anyone playing Miltank might have another chance at winning NAIC? I don't expect a Miltank deck to be in finals. I do not expect a Miltank deck to be at finals. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. If you came in at some point throughout the stream, though, I will be posting this on YouTube, and if you're watching this at a later date on YouTube, subscribe, and thanks for watching. And that's probably where I'll end the YouTube video. But yeah, if you guys were here live, thank you so much for tuning in for this short NAIC pre-NAIC meta stream thing in lieu of a typical metagame discussion.